So we've been getting lots of questions in the comments and emails about how did you run your wires, how did you cable everything, how are you powering, what lights are you using, and I thought it'd be nice to address some of that. So for the bar, we are running a 40-inch rigid adapt. This is the most sophisticated bar that Rigid makes. It's got a GPS module that we've mounted actually up here on the hood. And it's really nice because it does beam forming depending on the speed of the vehicle. So you can set a speed at which you would like the beam to be as narrow as possible. And as your speed drops from there, the beam will widen all the way down from 1 to 10 being the widest. And that's really, really nice to have as you slow down in the desert or in the forest. You can see wider when you're not going as fast. And when you start speeding up, you can see really far ahead. So 40-inch bar, we did make a custom bracket here. It's always better to mount from the base as opposed to from the roof rack itself. Mounting it on the roof rack would move. It would remove some of the roof carrying capability of the rack itself, and just better to hold the weight that way. So we pulled this trim panel up that you see here. It's held on by some clips up in the front and slides in to these rails back here that you can see. Pop that off, fabricated the bracket. The bracket goes into 2 hard points on the roof right here. Super sturdy, not going anywhere, doesn't move at all. And then put this back on with some industrial adhesive and glue and tape. So that's held down really well, not gonna go anywhere. And we ran the wiring, which you see coming out here. If you can see that, it drops down. We drilled through the roof and silicone sealed it on both sides, so won't have any water issues. It's the way that law enforcement would mount their light bars, and as long as you do a good job sealing it. I know it can be a little scary to drill through your roof, but if you seal it well, you're gonna be okay. One thing to note is on this particular vehicle, the Defender, it's very difficult to clear the glass here as that opens. We wanted to retain the ability to open the roof. And so to do that, we had to actually increase the height of the roof rack. So if you can see, the rack normally sits right on this. We added spacers on all 6 posts to lift it by about a ½ inch, maybe a quarter. And that gives us just enough clearance for that roof to still be able to come back and clear the bar. So on the rear of the vehicle, I am a firm believer that amber lights are the optimal light for here in Southern California because they cut through dust much better than white or red do. So we've got 2 rigid chase lights mounted on the roof. These are just bolted through our roof rack, and very similar wiring as the front bar. We drill through the roof, silicone seal on both sides, and run those wires down through the headliner and back up the driver's side A-pillar, ultimately out to the Switch Pro control box up under the hood. Okay, so wiring comes through the roof of the vehicle here. We drop the headliner, come forward on the headliner, runs down this A-pillar here, and then down the kick panel and out through the firewall. While we're here, we can also talk about the controls. You can see the rigid adapt controller here. It's just double stick taped and the cable runs down. It's elevated a little bit to make room for our ham radio, which we'll talk about on another video, but really easy controls for turning that on and off, adjusting your beam pattern, even the colors of the backlights and neat things like that. Okay, so we're utilizing a Switch Pro's device for all of the electronics that we've added to the vehicle. It allows us to wire everything into a central location and control it with a data board. There are no relays involved on this. So you run your hot, you ground it. This goes up to the controller that will show you inside the vehicle. And there's a control box back down there that you can't see quite in this shot. And that's where you run your lighting, hots, your compressor, your radios, anything that you want to power off of that would come into that Switch Pro box and allow you to control everything from one central location. It's super clean, way better than having a dozen wires connected to your battery, and just really the right way to do it. Okay, so how do we turn these lights on and off while we're bombing down the trails? Well, we have hidden the Switch Pro's control panel up in here. This has 8 switches. They do make smaller and larger ones, and comes with about 100 different stickers so you can accurately describe whatever that button is controlling. I believe the range on here is from 10 to 40 amps. I'd have to double check myself on that, but some of these are higher wattage or amperage than others. But we've got the rack lights, which are the back lights for the front light bar, set to turn on with ignition. They just kind of look cool. They're pretty low and they don't hurt. We can control our light bar from here. We've got 4 different controls for our rear lighting, depending on what we want to do. When I'm driving down the trail, I prefer strobe. Gives us really nice visibility. The Switch Pros is really, really convenient. There's tons of things you can program with the included Bluetooth app. For example, if you wanted to have a light bar strobe that doesn't have strobe capability out of the box, you could configure this to do so. You can dim it by holding to adjust the brightness of the light bar. As far as I'm aware, that's the only controller that on the market that allows you to do that today, and works really well. One cable running back to that control box that we showed you up under the hood, and allows us to keep everything nice and clean. This we ran down the A pillar as well when we were running the other wires for the lights.